Okay, welcome to the 17th video in this series on getting this 1974 Mercury Capri ready for lemons. At the end of the last video, 16, we were dealing with a broken bolt on the tensioner on this 4.0 V6 from the Mustang. So the end of this bolt is stuck in the casting here, and I am pretty worried about getting it out. We got to pull the engine out because there just isn't room to get a tap in there. So that's what we proceed to do. So this is on a Thursday evening. Keaton and I pulled this out Thursday the 1st of September. We're supposed to be driving to Denver with the car on a trailer on the 7th of September. So right at the 1 week mark, we are pulling the engine out and taking apart a lot of our work. Then we're pulling the transmission off the engine because we also are seeing an oil leak on the rear main seal. So Keaton's going to work on pulling the flywheel and the seal, and I'm going to work on trying to get that stuck, the end of that bolt out for the tensioner. So Keaton quickly gets that off. That seal was bad. Once he pulled it, actually, we found a little gouge on the crankshaft surface. So we had to sand that, had to buff it out, and then but we did luck out here on this end of this bolt while I was playing around trying to get it out. Just with a drill, it started to move, and so I was able to just back it out almost by hand. So we really lucked out with getting that broken end out, and then we got a replacement grade 8 bolt to put back in there. The other thing that we replaced was the seal on the front tensioner. Timing chain tensioner. It was actually leaking oil down into the valley between the two cylinder banks, and so we could have done that with the engine still in, but when we had it out, we took care of that. We also took care of a few adjustments needed for spacing for the hydraulic clutch slave. It was a little tight with the way things had been configured, so I got in there and opened it up while we had the engine out. Now Keaton is working on getting the flywheel. Oh, and Elizabeth came to give us a hand, Keaton's wife Elizabeth, and she helped Keaton with getting the flywheel and clutch reinstalled. The flywheel went easy enough, but the clutch we could not get. Oh, and here's Rick Barnes has brought us a modified air intake, so we're going to be able to put a different cone style air filter on the end of that, and there'll be room for everything to fit while we keep our mass air sensor. Like I say, Keaton is trying to get the clutch installed, but one of the issues we've got is we can't get the right little guide tool. No place in the Salt Lake Valley had the right one for a 4.0 liter Mustang, so we ended up buying about 4 different ones, just hoping we could make one work, and finally we did have one that we were able to make happen, but it turned putting the clutch back into a much longer process than it needed to be. We appreciated Liz's help with that, though. She did help with that and some other things that day. Then we're getting the transmission hooked back up here, and then got to torque all those bolts. I think you'll see Keaton doing that there. And we are close to putting that thing back in. We also took the opportunity to change the oil while we had it out. But here we're getting it put back into the car. So we had taken it out Thursday night, and this is end of the day Friday. We're setting it back in. So it was a pretty productive Friday. Keaton and I both took some time off from work to try and get us back on schedule here. So I'm putting accessories back on the front, the alternator and the power steering pump and those things, and then running wires. I think we get all the way this evening to getting the intake put back on there. And then the next day is Saturday, and Keaton's there helping me again. This is the weekend before the race, and we still got to get to Denver, getting the radiator hooked back up, making room for that new air intake that Rick had made for us. And then Rick is working on, he went out and got high performance brake pads to change out the brake pads. He also is putting in a controller for a cool suit. When you're racing one of these cars without air conditioning on a hot day, it can get really hot inside, and there's a thing called a cool suit that will run, or a cool shirt, basically tubing that runs through a t-shirt that'll keep you cool. It runs a pump through a cooler. I'm getting the accelerator pedal hooked up here. It had just kind of been temporarily held in, and we're trying to get it put in a more permanent fashion. Oh, and actually, I'm not working on that. I'm working on the last bit of transmission tunnel cover, and I have to do that before I can put in the accelerator. So that's kind of what I'm working on, is fitting that stuff. And then once I add the pieces in that go near the accelerator, now I'm putting in the accelerator pedal itself, since we had the final pieces of metal in that needed to go in there. Do a quick vacuum out after I created all the chips to drill the 3 holes needed to mount the accelerator pedal. And then pretty quickly here, we've got all our pedals in the car. Now, like I say, Rick was helping us out. He actually went and bought the brake pads, and then has been working on putting them in. Now, as we worked through this Saturday, the front brake shoes went pretty easily. The rear brake shoes gave us a lot of trouble, and it turned out that on the Mustang, the rear brake cylinder, the piston that actually squeezes things down between the calipers, you got to rotate it as you push it in, which was new to me and new to Rick. So we wasted a little time figuring that out, but we're finally have all new brake pads on, and Rick's getting the tires on the car. Goal kind of being here that we would like to drive this car. Now, Elizabeth and I are going to work on the alignment, and I'm sorry for this camera angle. Essentially, we took a couple steel plates, and you saw Elizabeth put grease on one side of them. We actually just put them down on the garage floor, the grease side down, and then the rest of the front tires on the plates. Then we're using lasers and tape measure and a square to do the alignment, and maybe not quite as good as a real laser measurer, but it worked out really well. The car tracked really nicely, and we didn't have any issues with the alignment that Elizabeth and I here did. We were using a laser, but it really was the string method, just using laser rather than string to measure to. Now we're getting the hood put back on, and we're going to take this thing out for a spin. Now the hood doesn't quite latch. There's a little piece of pollution control that I didn't have on the engine when I measured the height, and that means we've got to kind of keep the hood propped open a little bit until we can get rid of that pollution control. Anyway, Keaton's going to back it out now. Let's listen to that. So it sounded pretty good, and it was time to take it for a spin. Now, Keaton said, "Dad, you should take it out." I think he just wanted me to get the ticket. It wasn't registered. But we just went around our neighborhood here with a lead car and a follow car. We got up to about 45, 50 miles an hour on the frontage road right here. It ran great. It tracked straight. The only thing we had was that there was a ticking noise that we just weren't sure what we were hearing. It would end up being the power steering pump, but at the time I couldn't diagnose it for sure, and it kind of gave us a little bit of stress. But we went, we're not taking the engine out again to try and track this down. This is whatever that little ticking sound is. We're just going to have to live with it, because our oil pressure was good. Cooling worked great, brakes worked great, steering worked great, it tracked straight. We were really excited considering, so this is Sunday, so basically we took a weekend and we're on the road now. We still have a really long list. It's running, but there's lots of things still to get done. We'll show you that list here in the next video, which we'll have for you soon. Thanks for watching, and more to come.